Well, aloha kako, everybody. Welcome again to another exciting episode of our Real Estate Aloha Friday Hawaii Real Estate Show. I'm your host, Peter Kay, and some of my good friends may be noticing that I'm missing the beard, and we're going to be talking about that and exciting stuff. But we're gonna get our pregame show, our pregame warm up going on. I want to welcome you all for being here. I'm going to get the pregame show happening. So let's kind of go around. Let's kind of go around the line over here, down in line in the order that I've got you all. So Scott, what's going on today? How's Oahu? How's the shirt? How's the background?
Everything's perfect and rosy. It's a beautiful morning. The sun's starting to change direction, so I'm starting to get it on my lanai here. But yeah, it's a perfect morning. But it's been a really busy week for me as far as work wise and things. So I've been running around quite a lot. I'm on my second cup of coffee today.
Second, all right. I'm still downing my first cup. But actually, I'm going to skip Dylan for a moment. Speaking of coffee, as Heidi, give me the coffee update. What's you're the coffee connoisseur of the group over here. What are you drinking today? What is that? You're muted. There you go.
Okay.
What do you drink? What's your coffee du jour today?
This is a yellow Katura. It's 100% Maui grown, and it's just super smooth, medium roast. And yeah, life is too short to drink mediocre coffee, so I'm glad I'm drinking this.
That was one of the big things that one of the first things I noticed when I moved to Hawaii, back in the 80s, was like, man, the coffee is just like next level coffee. Yeah. Dylan, what's going on, buddy? How's it going over there? How's it over in Big Island land?
Oh, it's beautiful over here. My funny coffee story people always ask me about Kona coffee is I grew up on a coffee farm, and my mom moved here from New York to work on the coffee farm. She loved coffee, and so she used to really be into like cupping contests and stuff. So as a kid, I would grow up and be tasting coffee with her. I guess it wasn't just like drinking water out of the garden hose. I guess it wasn't such a big deal not to give kids caffeine back then, but I wouldn't drink a ton of it. But she really taught me how to taste coffee and what the differences were in roast and stuff like that. So that was pretty cool growing up. And then I'm really bad though, because I'm not a snob. I drink like K-Cups from Costco now.
Dude, that just doesn't seem right. I did not realize that part about your history. I did not know that you grew up on a Kona coffee farm. How cool is that?
She actually won the cupping contest for Big Island or Kona coffee one year. I forget, it was in the 90s sometime, but that was a big accomplishment for her.
Man, that's really, really so Heidi, now we have an in. We have an into a coffee. So Dylan, do you still have access to like killer Kona? Can we kind of get into you for some killer Kona coffee if needed here?
Yeah, the funny thing about Kona coffee is that I find it to be really inconsistent. Like you have some farms that are really good, and it depends on the roast too. But it's it really depends on what your particular flavors are, what your preferences are, because there's some kind of like I really like Ka'u coffee, which is for the southern part of the island, so it's not really in Kona, but I just like the flavor and smoothness of their coffee. So it just depends on what you're into. But it seems like from farm to farm, estate to estate, a lot of these estates, there isn't large scale production, so they're doing small batch picks and drying and roasting. So there's a lot of uniqueness to each specific estate that grows Kona coffee.
Yeah, man, that's Heidi. I think we're gonna need to, when this COVID thing kind of clears out and we could do like inter-island travel. I think we all need to do like a road trip to a favorite farm of Dylan's that we'd all go to, and get some coffee going and all kinds of good stuff. That's I think that's what we got to get moving on. Well, again, look, it's just about that time. It's 8:59. We're gonna start like a few seconds early over here because we have a lot to cover for today. So want to welcome everybody again for attending. Jim and Amy. Jason, I got your question. We'll be covering this. Like, actually, it's one of the things that we kind of hit at the beginning of the show, actually. So, with that, let's kind of get the ball rolling over here. And so our favorite, of course, topic is give everybody the COVID update. And so this is really, really, really big news here, gang. We've got what's occurred is a couple days ago, the governor made an announcement, and actually, I think it's going to be best. I have a little clip here, so let me kind of play the governor's clip and hear it from the man himself.
I am also announcing today that Hawaii will start its pre-travel testing program for COVID-19 on October 15th, enabling travelers to avoid quarantine if they take the test within 72-hour period prior to their arrival and test negative. We have agreements in place with CVS and Kaiser Permanente who will offer the tests, and we will announce new testing partners in the coming weeks.
All right, so that is I had posted can I get a hallelujah on this one? But man, this is going to be interesting. So it looks like have you heard October 15th? I say could be the day, and I say could be the day because we've had this happen before where like they announced it and the day came and then they pushed it back. So I personally I would not be running to make my reservations yet until I kind of saw this as absolutely confirmed. And we're going to see in the coming weeks, we're about 4 weeks away or so. As the weeks progress, we're going to get more and more news increases. But October 15th could be the day. You heard the governor say you have to have you have to test negative 72 hours prior, no more than 72 hours prior to travel. A couple of additional stories over here. Inter-island quarantine is not yet been determined. It's still unclear. In other words, today, if you travel from Oahu to any of the neighbor islands, you're still subject to quarantine under certain circumstances. That question has not yet been addressed. So we still can't go to Dylan's Coffee. We still can't go to the coffee farm of Dylan's Choice here and have coffee yet without quarantine for 2 weeks. The lockdown conditions on Oahu also have not changed, although the mayor of Honolulu, Kirk Caldwell, has announced that he thinks that things are going to be loosening up in a week, but right now Oahu is still on lockdown. So it's a little bit unsure, it's a little bit unclear, but it looks like the 15th is the target date. So oh yeah, so actually, so maybe there's a good time to talk about the beard here. So Michael says your new look tells me you must really think this 10-15 date will stick. Actually, I have to say that the beard was actually a premonition, right? This is about a week ago or so. I was like, okay, I'm done with the COVID. I'm done. I'm shaving this damn thing. I can't take it any longer. So I shaved off the beard. So it was before the 15th. And now it just happened. I mean, before the announcement. I just had given up on COVID. I'm like, I'm not going to do this anymore. This is a joke. I was supposed to kind of grow the beard, 30 days, 60 days, 6 months later. I'm not going to do this anymore. So I'm done. So anyway, folks, that's the COVID update with my friends over here. Let's roll into some market update questions, and I want to kind of go down the line. There's a couple of there's a part of our the second part of our COVID update is kind of what's going on with the real estate market, and there's a couple of questions, and we're going to kind of roll down a few of them over here. Just a premonition of the questions. The big one, of course, is forecast for condos in Waikiki over the next 1 to 2 years. John from Honolulu, but I kind of want you all to hit that. Dylan, there's a couple of questions here on tiny homes. When we get to you, we'll talk about tiny homes. I've got a couple of questions on tiny homes about real estate. Throw that in, but let's all kind of do a quick round. Let's do a quick round of kind of what's going on, what's happening with the real estate market, and we're just going to go right down the line. So Scott, why don't you get us started? What's happening on Oahu?
Well, first, thanks, Peter. I appreciate you shaving the beard and getting us to October 15th. So everybody thank Peter for that.
It's like a butterfly effect, right? The shaving of the beard on one side of the earth, creates an opening for tourism on the other side. Anyway, go ahead, Scott. Thanks.
No, we're as far as overall market here on Oahu, things are really hot. So sales are up 3% from the same time last year. So we have more buyers in the market right now than we did last year. And the number of new listings are off 20%, and our prices are up 6%. And our inventory of homes, the listings that are on the market now versus the same time last year, are off 35%. So let me just give you a little bit of this, because I had a buddy of mine. I talked to a couple of people when we posted in our Facebook forum, in a private forum. These are homes. Kuli'o'o home listed for $850,000, 12 offers. Palolo home, $399,000, 16 offers. Royal Kania condo, $439,000, 7 offers. Miley home, $510,000, 14 offers. and then it's 7 offers, 3 offers, 16 offers. So
Scott, how does
significant
that
competition,
compare?
very
You
little
just ran off a
inventory.
bunch of, so you know, you live and breathe this stuff. Me, I'm just like a regular guy, right? I don't know what your percentages, you know, over my head. But what does this mean? I mean, how many offers do you normally get? You read off like one, you said like 14 offers on one property. How many offers do you normally get?
14. You would expect to not have competition, you know, technically in an economic downturn kind of situation. But, you know, we'll run into 1 to 3 offers in a not as hot market, or say pre-COVID, just pre-COVID.
So 1 to 3. Pre-COVID, we're talking 1 to 3 offers.
Most would be 1. You're not competing with a whole lot of people. 1.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's totally different.
Okay.
There's huge. A lot of buyers. It's huge. And think about it. You're going to spend $500,000 or $1 million. Do you really want to be competing with all these people? I mean, what it comes down to is you need to have the right agent, the right steps, the right system in place to be prepared. If you're ill prepared, you're going to spend a lot more extra time trying to find the right property and get into escrow on it. You're going to drag, and you could run into frustration.
Good. Let's move on to Heidi. Dylan, I want you to talk about the conditions and this tiny home question. So Heidi, what's going on in Maui? What do you see in the Maui market?
Well, I think if you're getting too much competition over on Oahu, you should come over to Maui because our market's great, but we're certainly not getting 15 offers on a listing. I was excited when one of my listings, we had 2 offers at the same time and just put that into contract. So our statistics show that, I mean, kind of similar to over on Oahu, number of sales and number of new properties going into contract is back right up where it was last year and pre-COVID. Overall prices have remained really strong. What we're seeing more inventory of condominiums coming on the market. It's still tipping towards a seller's market, but there's lots of new condominiums coming on the market. And especially in the lower to mid price ranges, there's better inventory right now than I've seen in a long time. And because we've been basically shut down for so long, there's less buyers in the market. So buyers now have less competition. I mean, the buyers that have kind of had the advantage are the local buyers that are here. And then also people that know what they want, are familiar with the areas, and those people are buying sight unseen. So, I mean, personally, the market's, it's been going, you know, as far as what happens in the future, that's what everybody calls me about and wants to know. And I mean, we don't know the future. A lot of it is going to depend on how things eventually open up with travel again.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Heidi. Great comments. So, Dylan, of what's going on in the actually, now that I'm looking at the screen, it says forecast over the next 1 to 2 years. We'll circle back to that once we get through this quick market update. Dylan, what's going on the Big Island? Fill us in.
Yeah, an interesting thing last month was that, and I'm, you know, I primarily focus in the Kona market, but it's an interesting indicator overall because the Kona market is the highest priced market on the island for single family homes, and it's not primarily, but you know, majority a kind of second home type retirement home market, which a lot of buyers are people that are coming from somewhere else or buying a second home, vacation home, that type of thing. And there was a 30% increase in sales in last month versus a year ago. So a year ago, there was 49 homes sold. This last August, there was 64 homes sold. In comparison to even a month before, where only 42 homes sold. So this, you know, we're kind of in the droves of this lockdown and all of this, you know, supposed to be a slowdown. And the housing market is just on fire in terms of the amount of homes that are selling. I mean, a 30% increase is significant month over month versus a year ago in the time that we're in. But one thing I also wanted to mention in the competitive home market, which I just experienced this past week, was that you really want to consider who you're working with, not just from an expertise standpoint, but from a relationship standpoint. Because at the end of the day, when there are multiple offers, 3, 4, 5, 10 offers, a lot of them are going to be very similar in terms of the terms, right? They're going to either be full cash or they're going to be financed offers with well-qualified buyers. And one thing that is intangible that you can't really put into an offer is who wrote it, right? And I had a situation this past week where there was multiple offers on a condo that we put an offer in on, and the agent said, I'd rather work with you guys. So, if they'll accept these terms, we'll just counter yours and not counter the rest of them. And we did that. So just based on a relationship and based on a reputation, you can have an advantage over other offers based on who you're working with. And that's something important to consider when you're going into a competitive market, is who's your realtor, because sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know. And that definitely gives you a competitive advantage if you're a realtor that does a good job, that does their part, because in the real estate world, a lot of realtors are hard to work with, or they're hard to get a hold of, or they just don't do their part. And then the other party has to do the additional paperwork and keep the timelines in order. I mean, there's a lot of it that goes into it. There's a reason why, we get paid what we get paid. And a lot of times that's something that people don't consider. So you want to make sure you're careful about that.
Yeah, it makes sense, right? I mean, if you're like, like in Scott's example, if you're sitting in and you're looking at 14 offers and they're all, pretty much the same, so dollar amount's not going to vary. You may weed out a few of the others, but at the end of the day, you're going to figure out if all things being equal, you're going to want to accept the offer from a realtor and who works well and who gets the job done. You don't want this mess. Makes total sense. Back to the question actually that was asked, which we should answer, which I haven't really pressed on, but forecast for condos over the next 1 to 2 years. So I think, John here from Honolulu is basically asking us to, generally speaking, where do we see the market going? I'm going to throw my 2 cents in and kind of want to have you folks comment quickly on this. My 2 cents has been, we've been talking since the very beginning of this thing, since day one, literally day one of this show, because we launched this in the COVID world. There's always been COVID questions. And every time that we've talked about it, there's not been a whole lot of changes, a couple of isolated areas notwithstanding, for example, condos in Waikiki. But it's been, stable or just as good, or we see all these offers going on. Where for your respective areas. So Scott, I'd like you to speak about condos in Waikiki for the next 2 years. Dylan, let's just kind of keep this to condo market limited and see if there's any exceptions. If there's any kind of Waikiki sort of parallel on the Big Island, and Heidi as well, if there's any kind of Waikiki, what would be the Waikiki parallel on Maui? If you folks can quickly speak to where you see things going in the next 1 to 2 years. Scott, let's start with you.
Yeah, so Waikiki is not what I was just talking about a few minutes ago. It's the exact opposite. What the market segment I was describing was actually, general housing where people are living on Oahu is competitive and will be competitive. With Waikiki, it's been the exact opposite, with prices dropping because there hasn't been any tourism, so there hasn't been any income coming in. Effectively, I mean, it's hard to put a number on, what's going to happen. Where is the bottom on it? And I look at it, October 15th could be that. It's the reset portion where you start to have income coming in, tourist income potentially coming into some of those short-term vacation rental second home market. What I the projections from the Tourism Authority that came out said we should be back to 80% pre-COVID within the year, and in 5 years back to full pre-COVID numbers from tourism base. So I look at it as, valuations dropping 20% in Waikiki, roughly 25% is kind of where you would mark it. And then over that next, 4 or 5 year period, as long as we don't have any other crazy economic hiccups, then it could start to rise and get back. And it usually takes about 6 months to a year to start to settle out, bottom out.
So you're if I was to summarize what you just said, Scott, you said there's like a 20%, there's been like a 20% price drop in Waikiki condos. Is that roughly what you're saying? And then kind of a recovery, sort of let's say a slow recovery over a 5 year period that's going to track with what goes on in tourism. Is that roughly what you're saying?
It should. The 20% price drop hadn't happened because I think what you got to do is get through this period where tourists are starting to come back. That's when you'll see your bottom. So if the October 15th gets delayed or some falters, then
right.
Okay, we continue forward. But yeah, that's right. Roughly what you should see. The 20% hadn't happened yet, not the full 20%. That's where, if I was to invest, that's what I'm looking at, because that's where your income numbers have been decreased by you, and that you do valuations. There's equations that you do income right. to value, and they're more or less saying get back to 20%, by the end, within a year. So.
So
or 80%.
for my armchair guy, clueless dude, a
Yep.
perspective here. What I hear you saying is that the prices are can still continue to drop in Waikiki. It's again, it's the future's in motion. We don't know when it's going to flip around, etc. But you still see some prices dropping in Waikiki, and then as tourism comes back, of course, those prices will come back. Is that kind of what you're sort of saying?
Yeah, you have two things. Housing and buying a home is not like buying a stock where you have an instantaneous price valuation. So things typically lag, markets typically lag. So it takes a little bit longer for the bottom to kind of level out. And what people are going to need to have the confidence to be able to buy in Waikiki is to start seeing some consistent income coming back in, to know that it's safe for them to buy and that they'll have some income for that property. And that could take 6 months.
Got it. And prices have already dropped in Waikiki, not the full 20%, but prices have already dropped in Waikiki. So in a sense, I don't want to say you're getting a bargain now, but you're getting below kind of what you would buy the property for a little while ago. So really if I'm kind of thinking about this from an investment kind of a standpoint, you kind of want to figure out what you want to, it's always risk. No matter what you do, you can wait, or it could turn around. You could buy now, you could wait, you could ride it out. It's all kinds of issues. Okay, great. Heidi, what would you say is the equivalent? What's the equivalent sort of condo area in Maui that you can speak to, and what do you kind of see going on over the next 1 to 2 years?
Sure. Well, there's no Waikiki in Maui, but I would compare it to resort condos and short-term vacation rental condos, and we have a lot of those in South and West Maui. I mean, right now there's more inventory coming on the market. I think if we do open up and tourism starts returning, that market could be pretty stable, with just, pent up demand from before, from not a lot of sales happening. But it's kind of to be seen. I mean, if we shut down again and are shut down for 3 to 4 months, I think you're going to get a lot more owners that are just going to have to sell because they were depending on that income. I'm not seeing the buyers anymore that come to me asking, how much am I going to make on this condo? I mean, the buyers coming in today, they're buying because they want to be on Maui and enjoy time here. And that's really the best reason to buy a Maui condo, in my opinion. But yeah, it's to be seen. It's to be seen.
So I'm kind of hearing again, not too different actually from what Scott's saying, right? There's been some the buyers haven't kind of shown up yet. It's going to be tentative based on what's going to happen with the tourism market. Heidi, has Maui also kind of in those areas, in those resort areas, have the prices also dropped as well? We don't know if they've dropped like they've dropped in Waikiki, but have the prices also dropped over the past 6 months?
There's been some lower sales, and in some complexes, but overall they're pretty strong. Prices in that sector on Maui have appreciated a lot just in the past few years. So even if prices are dropping now, they're still probably making a lot more than they would have 2 years ago.
Right.
It's interesting. But for a buyer right now, there's definitely there's more opportunities now than there were. And then, it just depends on the particular buyer's goals and, if they're
sure
what they want to do with the condo.
Got it. Dylan, fill us in. What's the condo situation going on on the Big Island?
So this is funny that we always have to give the disclaimer, right? Like we don't have a crystal ball and don't take our advice to the bank, because if you asked me 6-7 months ago about the condo market, I was super bullish on it because we had just had a new vacation rental regulation put into place on the Big Island, and that was going to greatly reduce the number of single family homes who didn't have the correct zoning who could vacation rent. And what that in effect was going to do was push vacation rentals back to the condo complexes, because the condos all have the correct zoning. Unless their HOA prohibited vacation renting in the condo, you could do it by getting the permit from the county. So I saw going forward as condos increasing in value significantly, because the demand for vacation rentals, if that's what your plan was, if your plan was to vacation rent, you would have a lot less competition, because you wouldn't have the single family home market out there being able to vacation rent their homes on a whim like you did pretty much up until now. And so 6 months ago, I was telling everybody, condos are going to be a great, especially just a small condo, a studio, a 1 bedroom, a $200,000-300,000 condo would be a great investment because you're going to have more demand if you want to vacation rent it. And of course, then the bottom fell out. COVID hit, and nobody's here, and it's not a good time to be owning a vacation rental. So going forward, I still think that dynamic applies. If travel opens back up, you will have the demand for those condos based on just a decrease in the overall inventory. But again, we can never predict when things like this happen and travel slows down. And so you really want to make sure, I think back to Scott's point and Heidi's point about, you want to buy a condo if you definitely want a condo. Don't buy a condo because it's like you think you're going to get rich off of making money. A lot of times it's a break-even endeavor. You get a free place to stay a couple weeks a year, a month out of the year or whatever. But going forward, the vacation rental, if it comes back, it should be stronger. But an interesting dynamic overall in the market, just last month, if we're talking real time, is, and this kind of makes sense, there's a lot more high-end condos selling. So the median price that sold last month was 46% higher than it was a year ago. And that's mainly because the people who are buying condos now are buying higher end, $1 million condos, $800,000 condos that have the disposable income to do that and just hold them, as opposed to the buyer who's buying that lower end $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 condo who maybe using it as an investment or a vacation rental to try and generate some income. So interesting dynamic in the market. The condo market is still slower, but the higher end market is faster because of the type of buyer that's out there.
So that was a really interesting point that I think all of you have brought up, certainly Heidi explicitly, but it's like, look, if buy a condo in Hawaii because you want to live in Hawaii, so to speak. Don't buy it on its investment grade that you're looking at, kind of turning it around and kind of making money. It's not this, unless you're really for some risky, rough, bumpy times, it's not going to work out well for you. However, if you're looking to, because you want to live in Hawaii, and again, that's the website's name, right? The website's name is Living in Hawaii. It's not investing in Hawaii, realestate.com. We're livinginhawaii.com. Which is really what this whole thing is about. Anyway, that's an interesting observation. I think if you look at it that way, you buy the property because you want to live in the property, as opposed to you're buying it because you're trying to figure out a way to make money as an investor. You're going to be much more better off. Great. Hey, let's move on to the next one. Dylan, I want you to kind of lead with this. I had a couple of questions on this. Let me kind of read off the details, and then you can kind of speak to it. A lot of questions on tiny homes, and we've had some questions on tiny homes for Oahu as well, and I don't know how much it applies on Maui as well, Heidi, but let's just kind of go down to this. So first, Wilma says, is there a viable tiny home movement on the Big Island? If so, where to find out more about it? Marika says, hey, I've just seen several tiny homes are on off grid for $100K. So I'm wondering if they're in lava areas. If you can pay cash, can you pay cash? Is there one's small? There's a bunch of questions. And then another one. Wilma says, it does not seem that tiny housing is being encouraged on the Big Island. Is there a reason for this? Could it make more affordable housing for those wanting to downsize? And then another one, this is very recent. This one is from Wilma again. See, there's like a bunch of people. There's like 2 or 3 people who send us like a bunch of questions. Wilma from Mexico said, I'm relocating to the Big Island in late October from Mexico, and am bringing a 35-foot fifth wheel trailer. Can I remove the wheels and set it up as a tiny home? So we got a couple of questions on tiny homes. Some interesting things on that. Dylan, can you lead us off? What's going on with tiny homes on the Big Island? Why hasn't it? I think you spoke to us once before a while back. What's going on with tiny homes? Is it a good idea? Is it not a good idea? What about this fifth wheel that Wilma's bringing, a 36-foot trailer she's bringing to the Big Island? I've never seen a fifth wheel trailer, but maybe they're around. What's going on, Dylan?
So there's tons going on here. The first thing I would recommend is call the county planning department and ask them about what you want to do, because that's, at the end of the day, the permitting department that's going to approve or disapprove of what you want to do. But there's a lot of other dynamics that go into this. There are a couple of tiny home providers that are starting up here on the Big Island. Mockingbird Tiny Homes is one of them. And so there is, I think, an effort to start getting that going, but it's not the super amazing deal that I think some people come into it, or maybe it is in other places, because you still have to do things like put in a septic system. Most cases, we don't have connected sewers, so you got to put in a septic system. That can be $20,000+. If you want to hook up to municipal electric, it has to be a permanent structure. So it can't be something that you can move around or like a mobile home type thing. So that's one issue. Another issue is where you actually put it. So a lot of the areas that have land that would allow for a tiny home type situation are in more rural areas. So if you wanted to do that in a area like Kailua Kona or a more built up urban area, a lot of times the neighborhoods there have CCNRs that either have a minimum square footage or have different prohibitions on what you can build and what you can put on the property if you buy a plot of land there. And the land is expensive, right? I mean, a 7,000 to 10,000 square foot piece of land in Kona can cost you $150,000 to $250,000 just for the dirt before you put any infrastructure in, before you grade it, all of that stuff. Of course, you can get cheap land in South Kona or South Hilo, but now you're in a very rural area. You're close to the volcano. You don't have municipal water. There's all kinds of other issues. So it's a really dynamic situation, and you really want to put some thought into it before you make an investment in shipping a tiny home out here or a trailer out here, which could cost you 10 grand in and of itself. So there's a lot of different costs that have to be considered.
So what about this? You know, when I saw this question on the 36-foot fifth wheel trailer, I thought to myself, you know, I've like never seen anyone do that, and I'm just kind of wondering, is this something that's going on? Have you seen this happening are people doing this?
Well, I think in the mainland, those are they're not tractor trailer trailers, but you could put them on like a F-350, like a big truck, right? And they're like a mobile home that you can tow with a truck.
I've seen them. I'm just wondering if it's kind of happening on the Big Island.
But what you got to have is you got to have a place to hook it up, right? And offload the wastewater and unload fresh water and hook up to electric. I mean, you have parks and there's infrastructure in the mainland that support that type of living or that type of housing. And here we just don't have that. I mean, it's not something that maybe we could in the future, but it just doesn't exist. So you'll have that here, but then you're going to have to figure out a way to get it all hooked up and deal with all of that. So it's not as simple as just dragging it around and hooking it up and living in it.
Okay, that explains it right there. What just explained it is that the reason why we don't see people driving around with fifth wheel trailers over here is because there's no fifth wheel trailer infrastructure here. You can't, like I do now. Remember when we did a bunch of cross country mainland trips. You know, you drive around on the mainland. You go to you pull into a national park and there's your hookups, and you've done some reservations ahead of time, and you hook up your wastewater and all this kind of junk, and you can kind of do it. There is no such thing over here. So Wilma. Go ahead.
Good luck trying to get a trailer park built in Hawaii.
Oh, yeah, that's just not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
That's just not going to happen. So Wilma, I hope you're catching this ahead of time, because fifth wheel, not a good idea. You're going to bring your 36-foot trailer. You're going to pay 10 grand to ship it here, and you're not going to be able to do anything with it. I think the other takeaway I got, Dylan, from what you were saying, was what summarizes in my mind is that the actual cost of the physical home structure itself is actually relatively small to the overall cost of buying or building a place to live in Hawaii, because you've got the municipal connections, you've got the price of the land itself, which is a huge cost, unless you get lava land, which is incredibly dangerous and may or may not be desirable for you. But with that one exception, the land cost is high, the municipal costs are high, all those other overhead, the permitting costs are all there. The actual cost of the physical structure itself is not that big of a percentage. So even if you bring that structure down to zero with a tiny home, you're still not going to save that much money. There's not that much savings there, because the cost of the structure itself is a relatively small percentage of the overall property. And is that kind of a quick summary of why the tiny home thing is not that big of a deal?
Yep, absolutely. And we have providers like HPM and Hansador who have packaged homes where it's a prefabbed package of materials that you can put up, and you can get those very affordably for 40, 50, 60 grand, 100 grand for a pretty big house, and then you just got to get a contractor to build it. So you can definitely do that in another way. But a tiny home, I'm not sure what a tiny home costs, but I'm thinking it's 30 or 40 or 50 grand in and of itself, right? So
got it. So real quick, Scott and Heidi, Scott, is there anything that's different on Oahu from what Dylan just said in terms of the tiny house not going to work? I mean, it doesn't normally work because the cost of everything else is so high, it just doesn't affect it that much.
Yeah, well, our land prices here on Oahu are significantly higher than they are in the Big Island, in the areas that this is being referenced in. So, right. and the smaller the house gets, the bigger the price per square foot that it costs to build it, because you still have to set up your framing for your, all the infrastructure for setting up that foundation and the framing. Your cost is still significant.
It's all got to get done anyway.
It goes counterintuitive to what you really need to do to be able to make sure you protect your value and stuff.
So I think if the land prices were super cheap, then the tiny house might make sense. But because of land prices are high, it doesn't matter. Heidi, do you have anything you want to add to this that we haven't already mentioned that's relevant to Maui or what you've seen?
I mean, I thought Dylan's answer was great, and a lot of that is consistent with what's on Maui. It's interesting. Somebody just contacted me the other day. They have a couple acres and they're trying to divide it up and make an RV park or a place for tiny homes. And they're kind of in that process, but it's not done yet. So maybe there'll be something available on Maui. I mean, any permitted residential dwelling, well, it has to be approved by the county. And a lot of people don't think about the utilities and things like that. And I was also going to mention the prefab homes, because we do have those on Maui, and they can actually put them together and deliver them to the site. And there's a few pieces and they put them together. So that's a pretty cool option as well for an affordable home.
So there are other options that are available that kind of make the potential attractiveness of what you might think of with tiny homes not quite as attractive as it may seem. Hey gang, we got a bunch of questions that have been popping in. Let's see if we can kind of hit these off real quick. So we have a new subscriber, Jesus, and he says, "Aloha, if we arrive in Oahu on the first week of June, can we claim Hawaiian citizenship a year later? If so, meanwhile, where could we file our taxes in 2021, Illinois or Hawaii?" So Jesus, I think the real quick answer is, I wouldn't call it Hawaiian citizenship because you're an American citizen. I think what you're really saying is, what is the rule of you being a resident of the state of Hawaii? And I think you were really talking about taxes. I think that's more of a tax question that you have to ask. You become a resident of Hawaii. I mean, I don't know it's more of a national a law than a state law of when you become a resident of that state. You basically come in and you get your driver's license and you're technically a resident. What you're really talking about is taxes. Scott, Dylan, Heidi, real quick, is there anything you folks want to add to that real fast on Jesus's question? Scott?
I know for claiming like owner occupancy from the housing, I can't remember if it's 6 months or if it's 200 and some days that you have to be here to be able to claim it as your primary residence, your housing, so to speak. And then the taxes are totally separate.
Right, your primary residence. Dylan, anything you want to add to this?
The IRS actually has, the state defers to the IRS on your primary residence. So the IRS has a list of tests that you have to go through, and if you check the boxes, then you say yes, that's your primary residence. And that applies to when you sell and capital gains and different things too. So definitely, I would say talk to a CPA, not a realtor, about where to file your taxes.
Well, we'll have to add a CPA into our mixer one of these days. Heidi, anything you want to add to that for Jesus's question?
Well, I can just add from my own personal experience, having relocated from Illinois originally, is I had to file taxes in both states. So.
Oh, geez. Okay.
But again, ask your CPA.
Here's some tax advice though from a realtor. Is you really want to look at, Hawaii is a pretty high tax state in terms of income and other things, and so a lot of people do really carefully look at, is the tax benefit to me being a resident from a real estate perspective offset the tax benefit of me not paying income taxes in the state that I came from? So there's some things that you want to consider on your overall tax situation, which again, a CPA can better advise you on, that you really want to look at before you say, I just want to become a Hawaii resident, because it could be worse, it could be better. In a lot of cases, it could be worse.
That's a really, really, really good point. Yeah, Scott, you want to add?
Yeah, there's an interesting dialogue that we have sometimes for people that are moving from a place where their home is worth, say, $200,000, and they're retiring here because the income tax side in Hawaii is significantly high. property taxes or values of properties is big, but we have these huge appreciation swings. If you do have a property that is your primary residence and you go to sell and you've been living in it for 2 out of the past 5 years, you can actually take up to a $500,000 gain if you're married, or $250,000 if you're single, without paying tax. So there's multiple things that you have to kind of go through scenarios in kind of planning out your tax position when moving to Hawaii, whether you pay it here or not.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm catching out of this is talk to your CPA. It's complicated, and there's a lot of issues that will depend on your residence, your primary residence, your tax, the state you're coming from. Heidi, as one who is also born in Illinois, it's sad to see there's a massive exodus going on right now from our state, the state of our birth. Sad to say. We got some related ones really quick. Well, first one, a quick one from Trish Carlson. Aloha, thinking of relocating to Big Island. How can I contact Dylan? Mahalo. Easy, right on the YouTube channel that you're watching, Trish. There's a form. Click on the link in the description. Click on that form, and we will connect you with Dylan right away. That's the bestest, easiest way to connect with Dylan. Dylan, is there anything else you want to share? Is any other way you want to give to Trish to contact you?
Or Dylan at buybigisland.com, and or we'll put contact information in the comments so I don't put it out to the whole world. I want to give you my phone number to the whole world. So. If you just Google Dylan Nonaka, I'm the only one in the world, so it's pretty easy to find me.
Dylan, here, so there, Trish. So you could just Google what you see right there. Google Dylan Nonaka. There's only one. So you've got great SEO performance on your name there. Lucky you. Actually, kind of find that you mentioned, when I if you Google Peter Kay, you'll find there he's a comedian in England, which is really kind of funny. Anyway, so let's move on. We got another one here. This is from James. James Christopherson says, what capital gains do residents versus non-residents have to pay upon sale of a house or condo? Scott, that's almost along the lines of what you kind of sort of just mentioned a little while ago. You want to start one? You have any sense of what that is?
No, I can't talk about the non-resident side because it comes down to taxes, and then you take into recapture and how much depreciation did you do. There's all sorts. That's a total tax.
That's actually a really good point. Go ahead, Dylan.
I think what he might be referring to, and I think we had a question on the slides later on, is HARPTA. So there is a tax in the state of Hawaii. Actually, there's two taxes. There's a federal tax called FERPTA, and there's a state tax called HARPTA. And if you are a non-resident and you sell property in the state of Hawaii, you're subject to a 7.25% withholding, which is in effect a capital gains tax, and the state requires that to be withheld at closing, so you can't skip town and not pay the state for the capital gain. It's complicated. Again, you want to get some tax advice on it because it's on the amount realized in quotation marks, which is normally the gain. So if you don't make any money or you put a bunch of investment money into the property to get it up to where it is and its value now, there are some exemptions, but you want to look into that and consider that when you sell, because a lot of times people are surprised that there's an additional 7.25% tax when you sell.
Yeah, that's an interesting one to look at too, because if you go to sell and you're subject to the HARPTA withholding, the state effectively withholds the 7.25%. So you have to file the tax return. The federal government withholds 15%, and it's on the purchase price. So when you go to sell, effectively you're having to withhold 22% of the purchase price, not the gain, in order so that you have to file your tax returns to the state and the federal government, make sure they get their money. There's ways around it. You do a 1031 tax deferred exchange, but it gets really complicated. So that's where you need a good realtor and a good tax attorney.
This is making my head hurt. This is making my head hurt just hearing all that. So thanks, James. I now have a headache, but it's okay. It's a good thing. So here's a quick one. Heidi, I want you to take this one because you could kind of pull on your story here. So Ariel Albuquerque says, Aloha, do you have any tips for brand new agents living in Oahu? Heidi, you moved here a while ago and you started out selling real estate I don't know if you did real estate before in Illinois before you came here, but what tip would you give to a brand new agent in Hawaii? And this one was Oahu, but we could just the story fits. What would you say?
Sure. Well, I relocated to Hawaii. I'm originally from Illinois and started real estate on Maui as a brand new agent. So I mean, my advice would be is find a good broker that a company that you feel like you can work with and that offers some training. And I mean, just get out there and do it. And it takes some time when you get started to get going, but it's such a rewarding career. And if you're willing to stick with it, you can definitely make it happen.
That's great advice. Thanks. Really quick, let's go in reverse order. Dylan, is there anything you want to that you would add to what Heidi already said?
It's a mindset thing. Real estate is I joke that it's a caveman business. You got to go out and kill if you're gonna eat, right? So you don't just show up and get paid. If you don't have that discipline to go to work every day and put the work in, I deal with new agents all the time who sit at home or go to the beach and they wonder why I don't have any clients. And like, because you're not working, you have to go out and do something. So if you have that mindset and you can do that, you'll be fine. But if you need a boss to tell you what to do and keep track of your time and give you tasks, it's going to be a tough run.
Oh man, Dylan, I think I'm gonna grab that clip and play that everywhere. That's just like best line ever. Not just succeeding in real estate. That's just like in succeeding in life itself. That's an excellent line. And I love the caveman analogy. Scott, is there anything you want to add to what's already been said from Heidi and from Dylan?
Yeah, both of those are really good. And, 80% of agents do 0 to 1 transaction a year. So you're not going to survive if you fall into that category. So a lot of it is, learning. You need to be able to learn. I'm 20 years in the business. So it's taken a long time to get to this level and to this point. So you have to have patience, but you got to have hard work and be aligned with a company that's going to help you learn and train.
I hope, Ariel, I hope you appreciate, I certainly do, the incredible wisdom that you just got from some really experienced, successful agents across the state. That's really, and I want to take this moment, as I want to do every show, if I can remember, is, to Scott and to Dylan and to Heidi. I so appreciate you folks being here. It's so great. I mean, I do what I do, but I don't know what you folks know. And it's so awesome to get your perspective, and the fact that we can have this discussion between the four of us and, have things apply statewide. It is such a blessing. And I just really want to thank you all for being here and taking the time out of your day. Successful agents' time is incredibly valuable. Everyone's time is incredibly valuable. So that's why I really appreciate you folks being here. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I would direct her to the sign on the wall, right? It says, the harder you work, the luckier you get.
I was going to ask you to kind of point your camera there, but I don't want to throw the shot off. You got but I do see what I see. Work, the luckier I get. So I can kind of see that. Yeah. There you go.
And the other one says execution now. And stop talking and put in the work.
There you go.
There you go. All right. Reminds me every day when I come in. I look at that.
Execution now. That's great. I love that.
It's a noun. It's a definition of execution. Right. Stop talking and put in the work.
That's what execution means. I love it. I love it. So even Teresa agrees. Teresa, I totally agree too. And by the way, Teresa, I did want to thank you for recognizing. Yes, the beard is gone. So yeah, I did get your comment there, and it's gone. I'm back to I'm the caveman. Speaking of cavemen, Dylan, the caveman is gone. The caveman with the long beard is out of here. I think so, folks. Look at. If we got about 17 minutes left, we got a lot of questions that we're going to cover. But look, I do want to give priority. We do want to give priority to the folks who are here now with us live. Your questions are the priorities. There's ones that you send in, and we got them all queued up, and we're going to get to them one by one. We've got a lot of questions that are here. We're going to go through them. But your questions come first. So if there's anything that you'd like to know, you definitely want to send us your questions now. And actually, Jesus gave us a nice kind of a shout out there. Do senior citizens still have to pay taxes? Yes, senior citizens still have to pay taxes. Death and taxes. There's no way around it. That's all there is to it. There's some tax benefits if you're a state of Hawaii. If you have a pension from the state of Hawaii, if you're a state of Hawaii employee, that pension gets a better tax rate, I believe. But you're paying taxes no matter what. And thank you, Stargazer. Appreciate that. Beardless looks great. I'm glad you agree. At first it was cool. At first it was fun, and then it got like, okay, this is kind of nuts. I was enjoying the length of the beard, though. It was kind of fun. I was going to kind of do a Santa Claus thing, but with COVID, Santa Claus this year is not going to work. Really quick, here we go. Shelly just asked, can you explain the difference between north, south, and Kona and Hilo side briefly? So briefly, Dylan, what's the difference between north, south, Kona, Hilo side?
So the east side in general of the island is wetter because that's where the weather comes from. And we have big mountains that trap the weather on the east side. The rain falls on the east side. The west side of the island generally is drier, and that's where all the resorts are. That's where the nice beaches are, and that's why property values are higher on that side. The north and south parts of the island. So the north part is Kohala, and those two portions of the island are very good agricultural areas, beautiful rural areas, but there's not much going on because after the sugarcane plantations shut down in the 80s, those towns kind of shriveled up and dried up, and there's not a lot of industry there. So they're starting to make a little bit of a comeback. You have some cool little art galleries and shops, local shops and things like that, but very rural. Both of them are an hour away from a Walmart or a Costco or a big grocery store. So land values are affordable, but it's a lot more rural if you and you got to want that lifestyle.
Yeah, thanks, Dylan. That's a great overview. And by the way, what Dylan just said about the east and the west sides of the islands actually applies for the most part statewide, because the trade winds move from east to west. They hit warm, moist air from trade winds. And I got this on my channel, by the way. When I talk about the weather in Hawaii, I talk about the trade winds in more detail. But because the trade winds travel in that direction, warm, moist air hits the east sides of all the islands first. So the eastern sides of all the Hawaiian islands are lush and green and wet and rainy, relatively speaking. The weather's always perfect. And the west sides are typically drier sides. They're the lee sides of the island. So that's almost a universal truth. West is dry and east is wet. Actually, I have a little story here, Heidi, I have to kind of share with you on Maui. When my very, very first touchdown in Hawaii was Maui, in the early 80s. And I took a drive, and it was the most amazing drive I've ever taken to this day in my life. And I took the drive, of course, to Hana. And the drive to Hana is absolutely breathtaking. You go through these lush rainforests and incredible waterfalls, and it's just like you're just on heaven on earth. And being like the dumb young guy, I just kept driving, and I just kept driving and driving and driving. So I didn't stop at Hana and turn around. I just kept going. And there was a moment where it's almost like I passed through like this wall, this like invisible force field, like into another moment in time. And it went from like incredibly lush to like dry, everything's dead, desert, everything around you. And it's like, I just couldn't believe what had occurred. So obviously what I did is I kind of went from sort of the east facing sort of to the west facing side. Heidi, I don't know if you've ever done that drive. I was kind of crazy to do it. You look back now, you're not supposed to do it. It's illegal. You can't take your rental there, but I didn't know it. I didn't care. I just kept driving. And I went all the way around. I ended up at McKenna and, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if you've ever done that drive, Heidi, if you've ever had a similar experience on that drive to Hana, but it was like unbelievable.
I have. It's a great drive. It's definitely an adventure, but you do see a lot of the different climates and a lot of the different parts of the island, especially if you continue all the way around and go through the ranch lands and come back that way.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Fun.
It was absolutely amazing. Okay, so thanks, Shelly. Hope you got that. Hope that answer kind of helps on Kona. You definitely. Dylan, for the folks who don't know this yet, who have sort of been new to the channel, you born, bred, raised on the Big Island. Is that right?
Yeah, but I have lived on both sides. So I was born and raised in South Kona and Captain Cook, and I still live pretty close by in Kealakekua, which is still considered kind of South Kona. And then I went to college and lived for 10 years in Hilo, bought my first house there. And so I know the whole island pretty well and spent a lot of time in Kohala in high school. I had a good friend and ag teacher who was had a ranch up there, so we spent a lot of time up there, and a lot of time in Kau, also fishing and hunting and stuff like that. So it's very diverse. I mean, the site you really want to spend some time. I always recommend to people, if you're looking to buy here or move to the Big Island and you're not sure where you want to be, you should definitely come and rent and maybe stay a month or two in each location and kind of figure out what works best for you.
Yeah, that's fabulous advice, as I've come to get used to I hope I never get completely used to it because it's incredibly valuable. All right, let's move on. We're going to go to our next question here. Heidi, why don't you get the ball rolling over here for us? This is from Newman, who's from Palo Alto, California. And Newman asks, what are the pros and cons of buying new construction on Maui? What are the new construction projects taking place? And he's asking about single family homes and perhaps townhomes and condos as well. Heidi, how would you respond to Nauman's questions?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think one of the pros about buying new construction on Maui is there's not a lot of new construction. So historically, it's tended to hold its value pretty well. I mean, even in 10 years, it will be considered new, or has it's been in the past. As far as current projects, definitely feel free to contact me about anything specific, but I'll just mention a few of them right now. So for single family homes in Wailuku, Central Maui, there are some homes being offered at Highlands at Kealani and Alima at Kealani that are under construction, available early next year, and they're priced in the 700s. There's also a new construction residential condominium project right across from the beach in South Kihei called Paradise Ridge Estates. And I was over there early in the year standing on a dirt pile with the drone trying to figure out what the views were from this one unit. So that was pretty fun. But those condos are $699 to just about $950 in that range. In West Maui, the Kahoma Village development, which is condos and condominiumized single family homes, there's still some of the homes available in the 700s. There's a few left. And then there's some condos available in the 400, 500, 600. And these are brand new construction. They're already built. This is kind of the final part of this development. You know, you asked about pros and cons. I gave you a couple pros. I guess cons would be something to watch out for is if there's a new construction development and they're just starting to talk about it, there could be delays. A lot of projects get delayed, so be ready for that. It could take a few more years than predicted, but yeah.
Thanks, Heidi. You know, I apologize. I kind of lost track. I was having so much fun over here. I kind of lost track of time. We need to kind of, we hadn't had a chance here to talk about our diamonds and our diamonds and deals. Let me see here real quick. I'm going to switch to that slide, but Dylan, can you hit this question real quick from Paul? It says, setting up an Airbnb on the Big Island kind of frowned upon by the locals. How would you respond to that real quick? You're muted, Dylan.
Yeah, I don't think that's a fair assessment. Ironically, when the vacation rental bill was going through, primarily the people who were for it, who don't like vacation rentals, were like retirees who moved here from somewhere else who didn't like their noisy neighbors that would, party at the pool at night. So I would say, it's a mix in terms of the people that are opposed to it. But in general, most people understand that that's a way of life here. But you do have to now, setting up an Airbnb is harder because you have to make sure you go through the permitting process and you have the proper zoning and all of those types of things. So it's not as simple as it used to be.
So it's not frowned upon. Actually, I'm kind of hearing you say that the locals kind of, it's not to say they embrace it, but it's not the locals who were against it. It's the folks who just moved here. Just like that one South Park episode. I got to find that South Park episode, which was fantastic. It was hilarious. But it's just it's more difficult. You may have to jump more hoops now because of the restrictions and the laws. Hey, gang, let's move on to, okay, so I want to get to our diamonds and deals. This is a fun part. The goal behind diamonds and deals is to have our friends show us the properties that they think are, aspirational properties, things that we can aspire to, things that we can kind of dream about, either that or deals, great offers. And many times they're both. They're both a diamond and a deal. So let's kind of hit this first one here. This is 3 bedrooms in Ali'ilani listed at $385. This is obviously the Big Island. Dylan, what about this property?
So Ali'ilani is a residential condo complex. They don't allow vacation renting. So everybody who lives there is either a long-term renter or a resident. But I just wanted to showcase a great property that's listed well. If you're looking for 3 bedrooms, it's not a huge 3 bedrooms, but if you need 3 bedrooms in a residential condo area under 400,000, this is a very good option. They got 3 beautiful swimming pools. They're right off of Ali'i Drive. So, you know, sometimes we put these like $5-10 million properties on here, but for regular folks who want to move here, who want an affordable condo, this is definitely a good option. And not too many places you can get 3 bedrooms under 400,000 anymore.
Well, I'm just curious, what are the maintenance fees on this? What does the maintenance fee run you for a property like this one, roughly?
It's around $500, so it's pretty reasonable.
Okay, it's pretty reasonable.
That's on the lower end in general for Kono.
Yeah. So this is like a great thing if you've got a job where you can telecommute. I would think this is like killer, right? Because you got the 3 bedrooms, so you turn 1 bedroom into your office. You know, you kind of fly in. You can fly into the Kona airport. I'm sure it's not too. How far is the drive from the Kona airport to this house, roughly speaking, Dylan?
20 minutes.
20 minutes. So boom, there you go, man. Fly out and you are golden. All right, thanks, Dylan. Great property. All right, so talk about aspirational. Heidi, 1437 Front Street in Lahaina, 3.3 is absolutely breathtaking. Fill us in.
So this is a direct oceanfront single-family home. It's right in Lahaina town, so really close to the heart of downtown Front Street. The home is a little under 2,000 square feet. It's a 3-bedroom, 3-bath home. There's an oceanfront jacuzzi. It was completely remodeled within the last couple years, and you can just grab your board, go down the steps, and jump in the water. So pretty amazing. And
Unbelievable is what I say, man. I mean, it's almost as if you can fall off the railing and land into the water on that one. That is unbelievable. Hey, really quick, Dylan, how long is the walk from that Ali'i to a good swimming beach?
Half mile max. Probably less.
Half mile. All right. So that is a nice property, man. Very, very nice. Okay. Scott, fill us in. What do you got over here?
Yeah, this is a great one. I think this is a pretty good value. Right at the base of Diamond Head, on the backside of 300-acre Kapiolani Park, a no-frills building, and it's fully been renovated. Kitchen, bathroom, you know, they got a backsplash on this, which you don't normally see. Some nice wood accents, but you're either quick walk down to the beach, which you can see the natatorium in the bottom of the picture on that, the one where it's pointing at, or you can catch, you know, quick Uber ride into Waikiki. I live in this area. I walked into Waikiki in the evening, and there's 13 restaurants right by. So you walk around Diamond Head, you come out your door, walk around Diamond Head or run. It's 4 miles. So you got a great lifestyle, outdoor lifestyle with more of a removed from the chaos kind of feel. But yet you can have access to everything that's
a nice property. Is this
offer.
In what's called the Pu'ule Circle area? Is that okay? Yeah,
Exactly.
I got some
Pu'ule Circle.
close friends that live there. They've lived there for decades, and it's such a cool place because you've got, as you can see here in the picture, you've got Kapiolani Park, right, which is practically your backyard. Practically your backyard is Kapiolani Park, and then just a short walk across the park. I mean, just a short walk, literally. That natatorium thing, that square. So folks, let me zoom in this a little bit. That little square down there at the very bottom left, it looks like a giant pool. It is a giant pool that's no longer used. It's called the natatorium. It's actually one of the controversial subject all by itself on Oahu, but we're going to skip that. There was an old Olympic pool, salt-filled pool. It's not being used. It's sort of been abandoned now. They don't know what to do with it. But right next to it, just to the right of it, is a beautiful beach, Kaimana Beach, which is not too crowded. It's just off of Waikiki. Fabulous swimming, amazing surfing. It's a great spot. You both did all three of you gave us some fantastic properties. So Teresa, we're going to close out with our good friend Teresa asks, how do you know if you're buying a home next to an Airbnb? How would you know? Can we do a quick round about that? Heidi, let's start with you, Heidi. Any idea? How would you know that, Heidi?
Well, on Maui, most properties that allow vacation rentals are in certain complexes or areas zoned for vacation rental. So you would know if the property allows vacation rentals or it doesn't allow vacation rentals.
Got it. By the zoning. Got it. Dylan, how about the Big Island? How would you know if you're next to an Airbnb or not?
You'd have to check with the planning department. They haven't published a list for privacy reasons, I guess, on exactly which homes have a permit and which ones don't. But you could call them and find out. So we could find out in the disclosure process.
In the disclosure process. So in the disclosure process, they would have to state there if they're next to Airbnbs. Is that part of the required disclosures on the Big Island?
It's not a required disclosure, but it's something that we would research. That hasn't been updated yet, because that's a standard. The form's a standard form across the whole state, and that's probably something that will be addressed here in the near future.
Okay, Scott, how would you know on Oahu if you're next to an Airbnb?
Yeah, it comes down to zoning at this point. But if somebody could be doing 30-day rentals, and you could research online. But the other thing is, as I always recommend to people, is spend some time in the building, spend some time in the walk in the neighborhood, check it out. But you could research online as well and try to see, type up the address, see what comes up around it.
All right. So I think that's I think for this is why, again, you want expertise, and that's why you want to work with people like the ones that I've been working with right here with Scott and Dylan and with Heidi. I want to thank you all very much. Again, this has been a great show as usual. They're really fun. The hour goes by like really, really quickly. Folks, we're going to see you in a couple of weeks. Make sure if you haven't already, click on the link in the description, get into the form, put in your question. You'll get on the newsletter. You're going to get you'll get a newsletter from me every Wednesday, which clues you in on the show. This show is also recorded. I'm going to send out the email in today or tomorrow, but you're going to get a link to the show. You could kind of watch it again. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Dylan. Thanks, Heidi. You guys have been great as usual. Have a great one. Aloha. Have a great weekend. All right.